When I saw this and I started reading it, Todd, I was like, how would Goldman Sachs ever approve, the media department, ever approve of this photo shoot and of this interview? And then I find out today, thanks to you and Sri, this was not sanctioned.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't sanctioned, Tim. And one of the funniest things, actually, I think about this whole ordeal is that just this week, Lloyd Blankfein, the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, released a memoir in which he fondly recalled this moment in 1986 when a young 31-year-old Jim Cramer, who, viewers of CNBC will know well, gave a quote to the New York Times saying that there was nothing in a store that he couldn't buy. And he was
and
gone
where did
from
he go after that?
Well, he went and hedge fund first, and then
but he left Goldman Sachs.
He left Goldman Sachs.
He was gone from the firm, as Blankfein points out in the book. He was
shortly thereafter.
Shortly thereafter, was gone for the firm. Yeah. For now, as far as we understand it, these young men are still at Goldman Sachs. There's another at Barclays as well, and another at PwC, which is also made some finger pointing on social media.
Wait,
about,
that's finance?
Wall Street? Right, exactly. Yeah. The guy does do data for finance and AI, as I understand it. And he's actually the only one, to be fair to him, who's gone on the record and reflected on this whole incident. Obviously, partly perhaps due to a different comms policy.
Well, that's it. What are what?
Is this career ending or job ending for these guys?
I mean, look, in there, people who are defending them are saying, let kids be kids, right? We're talking about 24, 25-year-old boys, right?
Oh my God.
But they also do obviously have
actions have consequences, kids.
Sure, exactly. Actions have consequences. And the worst thing is, I don't think it was necessarily the photos themselves. Mm-hmm. It was more about the interview in which they said some things that you might argue are quite unself-aware.
I haven't read all the interview, but it should be also the photos.
Why?
I don't know.
I mean, one of there was a shirt, I think a Tom Ford shirt that one of the Goldman trader was wearing with a massive cuff that was like way beyond his hands, and some quite questionable suit choices.
But don't they get styled by the photographers?
Yeah,
and
so
stuff?
They were styled by the photographers.
And that might not be their watches and stuff. Right?
No, exactly. And they, it was a kind of let's play dress up situation.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the new generation on Wall Street, yada, yada, yada. But obviously in the moment that we're in, the affordability crisis, complaints about, obviously understandable complaints about wealth inequality in the US, very political moment that we're in when it comes to the US's, economic and financial situation. It's understandable that the firm's a little bit skeptical about it.
Talk about the interviews and what some of the things that these folks said.
Yeah, I mean, one of them, this young guy, Mason Clark, who's an investment banking analyst at Goldman Sachs, he advised readers to, quote, live below your means while he was lying on a tufted blue couch and wearing a suit from Celine, a Hermes tie, and an Omega watch. Clay Nelson, who's a trader at Goldman Sachs, an equity trader in New York, he told the magazine that he once spent $3,000 on a Moncler jacket that he definitely didn't need. That's that's Mason Clark just there.
Sorry, for folks on radio, you definitely have to pull this up. But there was the blue tufted couch.
It's still on the front page. If you scroll down a little bit on Bloomberg.com, I believe it's still on our front page today. But Nelson told the magazine that he once spent $3,000 on a Moncler jacket that he, quote, definitely didn't need. And while he was wearing a pinstripe Tom Ford suit and glasses from a luxury German eyewear brand. So, and then also proceeds to say that, when he leaves the house every day and he, taps, it's like he has to tap his card to leave the house because New York's so expensive at the same time. So, it's not the most self-aware interview that young financial professionals could give. Do you
you cover these financial institutions, you cover these banks, and this is not the typical story that you would do, but you understand the cultures that these have, that in the inside, the cultures they want to portray. Sure. You mentioned Lloyd Blankfein's book. You don't want to be on the radar of, you don't want a high profile if you're 24 years old, 25 years old inside one of these banks, because that means that you've probably done something that has maybe rubbed people the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. I mean, a lot of people succeed by keeping their head down, by famously being, neutral, politically savvy people within an office environment, internally and externally to clients. You want to be a shapeshifter on Wall Street. You want to be able to be someone that isn't pinned or doesn't have any kind of negative reputation. That's partly how people get ahead, right? Cynically or not, that's partly how people climb the greasy pole in this industry. On the flip side, actually, this incident actually did remind me of a slightly more perhaps principled example from last year that I also reported with my colleague Sridhar, which is a trader at Citigroup who posted on LinkedIn about about the famine in Gaza and called it a genocide. And quickly his LinkedIn post was disappeared, and he was told, we understand that he was told to remove it. And that in itself, that story caused, that story was extremely widely read as well, and it caused a big debate as well about how much, how constrictive firms should be with allowing their employees to express themselves externally. Obviously, in this case, it's a much more sort of juvenile and, I guess, non-political way, but this obviously shows the firm in a questionable light in the present moment in terms of culture on Wall Street. The other example that we saw last year was obviously a very highly politicized moment where someone was trying to take a very principled stand and was basically, told by his firm to shut it down as well. So it's, while these two examples are very different types of things that people are expressing themselves in, it also comes back to Wall Street's fundamentally quite conservative nature and the need for these firms to maintain their independence or a semblance of independence among their clients, right?
No, it's interesting. It almost feels more Bonfire of the Vanities, like the era, where I feel like we went through a point where it was, there was an era, I feel like, on Wall Street, right? Like showing the wealth. And I mean, I just think about how many times we used to do stories and it was like a laundry list of the bonuses people were getting. And so it's really changed dramatically. There is a saying, though, just to wrap up, just got 30 seconds, Todd, there's no bad press.
Well, I think if you talk to Goldman Sachs' comms team, they might disagree with that. But there was some actually quite interesting takes on LinkedIn today. And there was a PR person who shared my piece and said that actually in some ways PwC won the day because that was the only kid who actually could speak candidly about this. He said actually on the record with us this morning, if us being normal causes outrage, then we're cooked, right, in Gen Z terminology. And in fact, they were the only comms team that didn't reply. So they weren't that fussed.